Friends, it's almost Valentine's Day, and like many of you, I have found myself in many conversations over the years about relationships, both with friends of mine, but also as a minister. And like perhaps some of you, I think relationships can be fun to talk about. I wouldn't say that I quite like gossip, but there is something entertaining about it. Relationships conversations are in part just plain fascinating. We get to look into another person's world. We get to witness the great unpredictability of human behavior and emotions. And relationship conversations can go deep. They are about who we are, the life we want, and how we want to love and be loved. As I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about today on this Valentine's Day week, it occurred to me that in all my many relationship conversations, one topic seemed to come up again and again. It's the question of commitment, of when someone is right for us. A lot of people in new relationships, of course, ask this question when they've just started dating, but I think it's an important question for everyone to wrestle with, whether we are very single or been in a relationship for a very, very long time. It's often a question that comes up when we're feeling good, when you want to reaffirm our commitment, or when we're feeling stressed and anxious. Sometimes that's often when we wrestle with our commitments. I've been thinking recently about a friend of mine from college who started dating someone recently. He is perhaps in the happiest and most loving relationship of his life. The person he is seeing is kind and has incredibly strong emotional IQ. Together they have great natural chemistry, and in a moment of family crisis, while the relationship was very new, the new boyfriend came through in a clinch and pressed everyone, me and the friend, everyone who heard about it. And yet, despite all those really positive things, my friend can't help feel that something isn't quite right. I can hear them wondering, is this relationship good enough? Is this what happiness feels like? Why do I still feel unsettled? He worries about compatibility, specifically about significant cultural and educational differences. His boyfriend comes from a working class background and received a 2-year degree, and my friend fears that that limits their compatibility. He questions over and over again, is this person right for me? One of the hardest things about dating, I think, and about any relationship, is feeling like it should be perfect, but somehow is not. In my friend's case, he had this great guy who checked all the boxes. It was what he thought he had been waiting for. And yet, it didn't feel like that at all. Instead of feeling bliss, he felt torn and confused. Not only is that hard for any relationship, but it's hard for the person feeling those things too. I could see my friend trying to understand his feelings and feeling deeply frustrated that he couldn't. When I talked to him, he shared these questions. How could it be so much better than past relationships and still make me so unhappy? Or maybe this relationship is perfect, but the problem is me. Doubts were swirling everywhere in his mind. Maybe I have a fear of commitment, an unrealistic expectation of what relationships should be, or a brokenness inside that keeps me from appreciating what I have and keeps me from being happy. Coupled with this frustration was fear. If I screw this relationship up, this relationship is perfect and I can't appreciate it, will I find someone as good again? Maybe this is actually as good as I can hope or expect. Maybe I'm just expecting too much. And then there was also the guilt. I will hurt this great person who believes in me. because I can appreciate a good thing, someone who's been there for me, who loves me, who I can trust and rely on. I recognize that not everyone struggles with these questions, but I think a lot of people do. They take different forms and have so many different layers, it can make us crazy trying to figure out what actually is going on. I think they revolve around a few central questions, in which there are no easy answers for. Just how happy should I feel in a relationship? What is an acceptable level of doubt, discomfort, or tension? Is my happiness more about the person I'm with, or more about who I am as a person? And to make the problem harder, we are confronted with contradictory wisdom that echoes through our brains. For example, things like, I've heard people say that when a relationship is right, you just know. I've also heard people say that relationships take a lot of hard work. I've heard people say that love and relationships are decisions that we consciously commit to. But the way that we think of love is beyond our control. We fall for it, whether we want to or not. I've heard people say you can't expect perfection. But I've also heard people say we should never, ever settle. It's all very confusing. In each relationship, in each situation, we can pull out a piece of conventional wisdom from the cloud to support whatever of the many paths there are right in front of us. For my college friend, if he stays with his boyfriend, he might say, I just needed to work on it a bit, work out the kinks. On the other hand, if he decides he's not so sure, if he doesn't just know, then he just cuts him loose. There are also some very common, and I think sometimes damaging ideas that come into play when we think about commitment, that play into our fears and our doubts and cloud our judgment. There are falsehoods, ideas like being single means being alone, or being single or divorced or separated means that you are broken or unlovable, or being in a relationship means you will be happier. None of these things are true, but they feel true. Part of the problem is that there is no relationship authority to appeal to. There is sadly no book or Bible or final expert that can answer directly to you and your situation about what to do. Now, I've been thinking a lot about these questions myself. As many of you know, I'm engaged now to a wonderful person sitting right over there. And that means that we have decided indeed that we are ready to make a commitment, that we do and have found the right person for each other. We're making a commitment that feels right and makes us happy. It's sometimes, though, surprising to me, because although I am happy now, most of my relationship history was much more like my stressed out and confused friend than anything else. I've had my fair share of feeling uneasy about commitments and wrestling with whether someone is right for me. Sometimes feel like I've emerged out of this jungle of confusion and anxiety and doubt, and it's hard to feel like I've gotten through it. But it has made me think about what the differences have been, what I learned during my good 15 years of trying to find the right person. The biggest thing, I think, for me, looking back, all those failures and frustrations, all those many first dates that went nowhere, was learning to have the confidence to be who I was, to feel what I feel, and trust myself. For most of my dating history, I erroneously felt that I could make a relationship feel more right if only I tried harder. That there were things that I could will into being. And yet I learned eventually that feelings are not some of those. We can't fundamentally change our emotions. I used to try and convince myself, like my friend, that certain relationships were right because they should be right, even if I was feeling doubt and fear and anxiety. I tried to power through, but most of the time, powering through is just another way of ignoring the feelings we have, another way of pretending like things are okay when they are not. It can be very hard, I know, to listen to the little voice within our heads that suggests that things aren't right, that things have never worked or are no longer working. To really hear it means knowing that we have to act. We have to disrupt the tranquil good enough, maybe hurting someone we care about and entering into the great unknown again. That is a big risk, and it's also very frightening. It took me those 15 years of failing at relationships to trust that little voice inside my head and my heart. I was a very slow learner. What made the difference was realizing the toll that wrong relationships were having on me. I was entering into relationships I wasn't sure about, and that meant I couldn't be fully myself in them. I couldn't be whole and true and free, knowing that I wasn't being honest with myself and with my partner. I was constantly being torn by some inner conflict about what I was doing, about the impact of my actions. And that caused me to suffer. I eventually realized that ignoring that voice of doubt in my head was causing me pain. I realized that staying in unhappy relationships was risking far more than remaining in them. I was risking my true chance at happiness and risking, on a deeper level, the integrity of my soul. Learning to listen to that voice meant ending relationships sooner than I had before. Meant being cautious about beginning them in the first place. I didn't want to deal with that internal conflict anymore. I didn't want to be in a place of internal turmoil. So if I felt with someone that it wasn't going the way I hoped, I knew it just wasn't right. On a very basic level, I think it is hard for many of us, and myself in those years, to remember and live out two basic truths. That we know on some deep level when something is right for us and when it is wrong. And that if we follow that intuition, we will be much happier than if we do not. All of us here deserve to be happy. And when a relationship makes us happy, it is the right one. If it makes us be a better version of ourselves, we feel safe and whole, it is the right one. If it is neither of those things, then it's not. In some ways, it's pretty simple. Marie Kondo would understand. Make commitments that spark joy and happiness and wholeness. If a relationship does not lead you in that direction, if it causes more bad in your life than good, more stress, more grief, more anger, it doesn't deserve to be in your life. I always think of a scale. Relationships, no matter how wonderful they are, go back and forth sometimes between good and bad, up and down. None of us will always have the scale way down on the good side, the ecstatic side, even the mildly, this is great, good side. Sometimes the scale will weigh heavily on the bad side. We will feel grief and disconnected, and we will doubt. And that is still okay, so long as that you know that in the end, the scale will tip back to its resting point, and that resting point is on the happy side. When I finally met Kristen, my now fiance, I knew right away that something was different. The first clue was that I couldn't believe that someone like her was interested in me. She was smart and interesting, We shared interests from board games to reading Ralph Waldo Emerson. She was also charming, confident, and cool. I felt lucky from the start. The second clue was that I went ahead and deleted my online profile, which was how we met after our very first date. I had never done that before, after many times on online dating. These were little clues in my head that were saying, everything might just be okay this time. And it has been. It doesn't mean that everything is perfect 100% of the time. Relationships do require work. But when the scale is unequivocally on the positive side, you know that a relationship is worth working for. The work can be hard, but you do it because you know it will bring you closer. You do it because your commitment, of your commitment. You do it because of your commitment. You don't do it to convince yourself to make one. So this Valentine's Day, no matter how long you've been in a relationship, or if you are single right now, take this moment to reflect on how you make commitments, the kind of commitment that you want in your life. Remember, trust your gut. Listen to that small voice within your head and within your heart. It is trying to keep you whole and at peace with yourself. Remember, relationships should be life-affirming and happiness-giving and joy-filled most of the time. That's where the balance should fall. And remember, it is better to be single and true to yourself than in a relationship and only living part of who you are. You deserve the fullest of lives, the happiest of lives, a chance to live in the most profound and truest way possible. The best kind of relationships make you more you. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying being single is fun. It took me 15 years of failing and some great luck online, of all places. But when we listen to that small voice within us and trust it, when we know what we want and who we are and the kind of person that we want to be, it gets a whole heck of a lot easier. So that when that right person comes along, we know that it is a match. We will know what love feels like, and freedom and wholeness too. May you find it in your life, no matter where you are. Amen.